public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by Zoom Video Communications, Inc. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by telephone, cell phone, or personal computer using Zoom. As always, some guidelines for a participant. Please use the chat or raise hand function if you wish to address the board. Participants will remain on mute until they're actually addressed by the board, and participants are required to display their first and last names on their Zoom account. All that said, by tradition, we will start with a roll call of commission members. I am Brian Barabee.
Laura Stevenson.
Paul Bramwell.
Jim Garrity.
Rebecca Bachaya.
Hey, we got the name right.
I was just thinking that. I was like, yes.
All right. That said, I think our first hearing starts at 7:15, so we have time before that. Rebecca, did you possibly want to discuss the proposed trail segment?
Yes, we actually have Drew here
Oh, excellent.
to speak on that, so I can certainly share my screen. I think I just unmuted him.
That would be good.
Yep, there we go. So I'm just going to bring this up for you. Drew, if you want to just give a summary to the commission, and then I will add anything else that needs to be done.
Sure. This
Just
is
regarding about the trail and the purpose of it.
Yep. This is a trail just to make a better connection through town to utilize some existing trails we do have in the area already. This one would be essentially creating a trail that goes, ooh, that's good, along the railway bed behind the septic system on the Derby field. It would, extend it along that already existing railway bed, kind of go towards the soccer field, come south along the edge of the soccer field. And I guess there's an existing edge restoration project that Rebecca's been working with in parallel and got more or less approval to do that, to add a trail through there. And then, it would then go into the kind of the wooded area behind the soccer field and continue along, meandering through a couple vernal pools and adjacent to a wetland area. But it's a fairly steep embankment upgrade from the vernal pools and the wetland meadow as it goes through that area. And then it hits kind of this existing cart track that kind of goes from those, I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but there's like a parking lot back there with some shipping containers at the corner of the soccer field there. So at the end of the parking area. So that existing cart track goes back, does this weird turnaround loop right around there. And then it looks like there's an existing foot trail that goes north. But what I'm proposing is to continue this cart path to kind of leverage this old existing bridge from probably before the 1990s, I'm guessing, just judging by the age of the bridge, to cross the stream there and then continue north up all the way along Berlin Road until it reaches Berlin Road. And there happens to be a Bolton Conservation Trust property right across the street to potentially connect into for even more trails. There's no trails right there right now, but I think the plan would be to potentially put that in and make a nice connection there. So what I'm talking about today is basically that 0.6 mile orange highlighted section going from the green dot to the red dot. And this is technically not conservation land. This is town land. I think any decision, and Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, would be going to the select board about whether to do this or not, but they may ask for the Conservation Commission's opinion. So I wanted to bring this up, and it does go near some vernal pools and some wetland areas. So obviously we want to take that into consideration.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you summed it up pretty well. Generally, I am in big favor of connectivity programs like this to our town. I'm familiar enough with this area that I can kind of see what you're trying to do, and it all makes sense to me. I had that same question for Rebecca. If it's town-owned land, it probably goes to the select board, and they'd probably look to see what we were recommending. I guess the only thing I would say is, would we need to file an RDA on our own behalf as we've done before? We wouldn't. Oh,
So it's possible. So
Okay.
not to interrupt Brian, but it depends
No.
on what the commission wants to do. If the commission wants to basically take this on behalf of the Bolton Trails Committee and bring it forward to the select board, that's something we can talk about. But if the Bolton Trails Committee wanted to bring it forward themselves, I certainly would assist with any filing requirements.
Yeah.
But then the commission wouldn't be like filing for ourselves, obviously, but we can certainly assist them through that process.
Sure. And I guess the only reason I would ask is, and I have no doubt with the trail committee using best practices, going through those areas while cutting a new trail. Again, I've seen them in action. I know they know what they're doing, but I don't know if we need to have that written down to use, certain techniques and or procedures going through sensitive areas and some of our kind of boilerplate stuff. But again, if it's a project that we're kind of doing, we're kind of sponsoring and allowing them to do, I'm not sure if we would need that. But as far as recommending the project overall to the select board, I would be in favor of it. I can't think of many good reasons why not to, but I would love to hear the thoughts or comments of other commission members.
So what is the is there like any vegetation and or wooded area this goes through? Is it mostly open space?
It's mostly wooded right now. Obviously, the railway bed is pretty overgrown with trees. I don't think we'd have to take many, if at any, out. But there's obviously some saplings that would need to be removed to make a safe passing trail. The rest pretty much goes through woodland, general woodland area. Rebecca and I bushwhacked it not too long ago. It really wasn't too bad.
Okay.
Like, we're not gonna clear cut anything, it's not super overgrown with anything that we can tell is, very dense brush.
Okay.
I think some of these trails were even there back in the 90s. On some of our older guidebooks, it talks about like some cross-country trails behind, the school, and kind of outlines where they were.
And that's true. Actually, a lot of like the cart path and the trails were originally part of the original Bolton Fair that took place on the Horse Ring Field, Derby Field, and some of those surrounding fields. And that's, I believe, why that bridge is there. That bridge is over here, the left of actually right here. So that's existing. And then I was just bringing up the aerial so you could see what it is now. And there's one vernal pool right about here, which is a nice depressional area you can see through the tree line. And then there's basically one on each side here that are potential vernal pools. And then you have this very broad perennial stream running through, and then a wetland system that basically runs all throughout the area. And then you have the existing cart path that is obviously well defined running to the existing crossing over there. And what Drew's proposing varies slightly from that existing cart path, but this is where basically it varies greatly, and it bisects those vernal pools.
There comments or questions?
That looks great.
All right. That said, unless anybody has reason not to, I think take a roll call vote on recommending to the Bolton Select Board the trail, well, the proposed new trail segment as discussed at this evening's meeting? All right. All those in favor of recommending this to the Bolton Select Board, please say aye, starting with Lori,
There we go. Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca. I'm an aye as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And we can, Drew, if you want to send me an email about what you would prefer in terms of who's bringing it forward, who's getting it permitted. I'm happy to work with you either way, but just so that I know who's basically driving that for us. And we don't have to decide that right now, but I think by the end of this week would be good so we can get on the next select board agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, looks like we're in good shape time-wise. Rebecca, are you good to continue? All right. I guess the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability for 644 Main Street, the replacement of an existing deck with a larger deck. Rebecca, is the applicant or a representative for the applicant here tonight?
I believe I saw Sean Hanaway, which may be the applicant. I'm going to ask to unmute them.
Yeah, I am the applicant. I'm sorry, couldn't find my unmute button.
That's okay.
Isn't
That's
that
why
always
I'm
the
here
way
to
it
help.
is? Isn't it always the way? Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to give just a brief overview of your proposed project? I will
Yeah,
try
certainly.
to pull something up at the same time, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
our existing deck. First of all, it's in bad repair. It probably wasn't. It's 664 Main Street's across the street from Town Hall. We're the big green house across the street. And there was a deck put on it when it was remodeled in 2003, 2004. And it just basically wasn't built very well. And so the current, it's kind of sagging and we've had some issues. And so we're going to replace it regardless. But also, as you can see, it's 9 feet by 9 feet. So it's really like a big landing as opposed to really a space that we use very much. And so we just wanted to take the opportunity. We've been waiting because we also have just gone through our septic system. Our septic field had to be replaced, which went through the Conservation Commission. And so that work got done in the fall. And we were waiting to see exactly how that worked so we could decide where we could put a deck without impeding on the leach field. And we've done that. And it's so we're expanding it. We're rerouting the stairway in part because of safety issues. It's an old house. It's hard to describe. Well, like you've seen it. I mean, and we have no gutters. And so that whole portion of the driveway where the stair goes down in the wintertime is like a big sheet of ice. And we've had some accidents. We've tried to, I mean, it's very difficult sometimes even though it's there. So we're rerouting it. So it's going to go away from the house and not be where the runoff from the roof freezes, and we have icicles falling and stuff like that. So that's part of the reason we want to reroute it, and it's bigger, so it'll be more useful. And we thought it was a good opportunity since our backyard's right now torn up because we just replaced the leach field for the septic system. So that's and we have plans, and it's I think our contractor's gotten all the building permits that he needs in terms of the structure and the safety of the structure. So we're waiting on this final part because I guess we're adjacent to the wetlands. And so, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, we're going to have to replace it anyway, just because of the poor repair of it. Yeah, this is really a drawing of the the septic we use the plot plan for the septic field, which is right there. And then the deck is actually, I think, yeah, this is the new deck, which would extend out like basically it says 22 feet, but I think it's closer to 20 feet. That was one issue we had to talk about. It's basically 20 or 22 by 16 feet wide. It'll be about 6 feet wider and about 10 feet or so further out.
So can I ask you, so when the new deck is built, the proposed deck, is that all over existing lawn currently?
Right now, it's actually, no, I had what I would guess I call, they're originally, and we could look at some of the other drawings that came with this, is I have a deck.
Yep.
And then below that, we had for the last 12 years or so, I guess what you'd call a floating deck. It was a ground level deck that was on concrete blocking thing. It's made to be sit on the surface. So actually that was the next 10 feet. So it's going to be wider, but the distance out into the yard is about what it used to be. But because of the septic system, we had to pull up that deck to do the excavation for the leach field. So that was torn out. It was not, I wouldn't call it a permanent structure because it was, we were able to tear it out ourselves. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess what I'm looking for, do you need to remove any trees?
No.
Like native vegetation or wetland vegetation?
There's
basically just, the ground that was underneath the deck /
It is literally the ground that was underneath the deck, underneath that floating deck. And then from where you see that drawing out, that is all right now.
Yeah.
We're hoping it will become a lawn at some time in the spring, but right now it's just all bare dirt. If you see those black dots there, that's about a little past there is where the tree line is.
Yeah.
There's no trees before you get to that point. And then there are some trees. If you look up in the upper left, they say it's a temporary shed. It's essentially like a shelter that we use to store garden tools and things. It's it's not a permanent structure. It's like one of those, can't think what you call it. It's tubing, and it's like a tent essentially, but and there are trees behind it.
I got you.
So that's that, and all along there is behind those, where you see that dotted line, I'd say that's about the closest any trees are in the back. And then the property line and that shed area back there, there's a couple of trees there, but there's no other trees in that part of the yard.
Yeah. Yeah. Even before the septic redo, this was all basically just, like you said, lawn or under deck.
Yeah, because it was, that's where the leach field is.
All right. The new deck, is there a roof being proposed on it, or is this
No.
an open deck?
It's an open.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anything proposed underneath it, basically
And nothing.
not a pad or no.
It's going to be, it will be just loose stone to keep the weeds down. And then essentially it's going to have a skirt around it. It'll be what I use it for now, which is to store excess lawn furniture and stuff like that will be stacked in there. So there's no structure. It's just, but it will be, there will be like a lattice skirt around it.
Okay. Right. Do other commission members, any other commission members have any questions or comments? Initial questions or comments?
Do you have to put any kind of footings in?
Yeah, there will be footings. The type of footings that we're doing, I can't think of the name of them, but they're not going to be poured concrete footings. It's some new technology that's they're stainless steel. They're smaller profile. They essentially use a machine that corkscrews it in.
Is it a helical piling?
Yeah, I think that's it. They basically screw it into the ground.
Yeah,
it's a stainless steel. And I wanted something with a low profile, frankly, because of the leach field. I don't want anything that will interfere with it. And it's not as big, it's not as intrusive. So, and it doesn't take as much excavating. It's more expensive, I guess, the material, but because of the labor, it's much quicker. And so it's about the same It's about the same price as doing the poured footings, but
And it's non-permanent too, which is great.
yeah, if you had something that was to go wrong, you can take them out more easily.
DEP is tending to show more favor towards those lately as well, where you're in a jurisdictional area.
Mhm.
Other questions from commission members? No, not seeing any at this time. Are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Not seeing any. All right. All right, that's it. Sean, would it be possible for us to get, and I don't know if we have with this, the actual deck design that shows what you're going to be using for pilings?
Oh, I have some drawings that we submitted. I could go, I'm not sure if you have them there, but I don't think they show I think they show where the pilings will be, but I don't know that they show any like
What's
cross sections that show the heel, the pilings themselves. It shows I think it shows the location of where they will be.
Yeah,
Let me see. I know let me go look I gotta look in my.
I was gonna say, I think Rebecca, I could probably, it's their helical,
filings.
helical
I'm muted.
pilings.
Am I
Sorry.
muted?
No, you weren't.
Oh, perfect. Helical pilings.
I was gonna say, that's probably something we can condition in to say,
Yeah, here we go,
The use
Brian.
of-
Let me just share my screen real quick.
there you go.
Yeah, so it shows your elevation.
Perfect. Just a roof, just regular. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it
And-
doesn't name the helical pilings, but I think just saying that would be relevant.
And one of the reasons why I say that too is, and I'll put this out to other commission members as well, but we've been out to this site recently, relatively, dealing with the septic. I can picture where this is going and what's being proposed. I think I'm comfortable with it as it's being proposed. I know, again, these people have no room to work with, and it going over existing lawn and remaining pervious and not covered. I think I would be fine with it. And again, with those helical pilings, at least they're non-permanent. They can be removed if there's ever an issue. But I will open it up to other questions and or comments, thoughts. And if anybody wants a site visit, would like to go see it marked out in the field, please let me know. I'm not seeing any. All right. Rebecca, do you have any comments, questions, thoughts?
I don't. The applicant's representative has actually come in a couple times to go over what they're proposing. So I'm very comfortable with and very clear on what's being proposed, where. And as you just stated, I'm very familiar with the site because I not so long ago did a site inspection for their septic limit of work. So, and I'm sure I'll be doing one once they get final stabilization.
Okay.
I'm assuming all their silt fence or wattles or whatever they're using is still intact at this moment, so that's nothing that needs to be required.
No, all of the erosion control and everything that was for the septic is still in place.
I think you could, Lori, to that note, say just, erosion control to remain in place until completion of the project. And I think that will retain what's there until the project's done.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. So if unless other commission members have comments, questions, thoughts, anything they want to add, I think I'd move to probably close it and try to approve and condition it this evening. Does that seem to make sense to everyone? Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for request for determination of applicability for 664 Main Street. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Lori,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an aye as well. I'd like to make a motion that we issue a -3 determination for 664 Main Street with the following conditions, that helical pilings to be used for the pilings for the deck structure, and that existing erosion controls remain in place until the completion of the project. Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Lori,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Sean, I will contact your representative and or
Okay.
you. It will also reflect when that document is issued. So we'll have to wait for signatures from the commission because obviously we're meeting remotely. But once we receive signatures, it will be issued. I will send you an electronic copy and I will also attach an electronic copy to the building permit on our viewpoint system that the town uses for building permits.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Excuse me. All right, so next up, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent regarding multiple locations filed by the Department of Public Work for proposed guardrail replacement and repairs. I see Randy is on tonight. Randy, could you give us a quick summary of what you're proposing to do?
Yeah, sure. Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening. Town's going to be replacing repairing approximately 4,400 linear feet of guardrail in various locations throughout town. And we've identified 33 locations or about 3,200 linear feet that fall within jurisdictional areas within town. The scope of work involves in some locations replacing just the guardrail. In other locations, yeah, thank you, Rebecca, replacing the post and the guardrails. In some locations, removing what's existing and putting in new post and guardrails. It kind of varies by location depending upon what the deficiency was at that location. I did provide the board with a pretty extensive booklet with identifying each location with pictures of the guardrail that as it exists today. It's quite an extensive project. It's going to be a good project for the town, provide adequate and improved safety for motor vehicles traversing our town, our roadways. The proposal in any areas where it's jurisdictional, we propose to have a contractor install wattles to protect the areas. Upon completion of the guide rails, if there's any disturbance by installation of a post or removal of an existing post, the contractor in the specifications that I've developed, their responsibility is to rake out and stabilize that area, not to just leave loose soil around. Now, it's important to note that when they install a guardrail, it's basically a jacking process. There's no there's no excavator out there. There's no backhoe that's used. They basically utilize hydraulic equipment to remove the existing post and install a new post in its place. There's no true excavation in the common sense of the term.
Say, I know, well, we haven't done guardrail replacement before, but I know we've done a number of projects that DPWs need to work on. I was just pulling up some of the files that just looking through what you had sent. In the past, I'll open it up to other commission members, but in the past, usually we rely fairly heavily on our conservation agent. I know you work closely with Rebecca. You're able to talk to her, and usually we can make sure that the conditions that you set up are basically the ones that we've used in the past or have been acceptable to us in the past. So before I put it out to commission members, I'd ask Rebecca, do you have any questions, comments, concerns with the NOI as it's been presented?
I don't, aside from I do not believe we received a DEP file number yet. I have not heard anything from them, but we can certainly reach out and see if they have any concerns or comments thus far, but it's likely that they just haven't reviewed this project yet. The other item would be just a point of clarification is that in the application, it clarifies as well, but the work proposed within this project is within the public right of way. And Randy can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not extending past it regarding the public right of way. So that's just something to note and have on record as well.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. Everything is within the right of way. And for the most part, if we are replacing a guardrail, it's the existing length of what exists today. There's a couple of areas. I can think of one on Green Road at the corner of, my mind just went blank, Sampson, I believe, where we're extending the guardrail around the corner to provide some better protection. There's actually a culvert right there. So it'll prevent, if there's a car goes off there, from going into the little brook that exists there. So we're providing some additional protection there. So there's a couple of areas there where we're extending it some feet, and that's all detailed in the detailed scope that was attached.
So other than that, I don't have any comments or questions at this time, Brian.
Other commission members have comments, questions, or thoughts? Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular project? I'm not seeing any. Rebecca, with us not having a DEP file number yet, is it best for us to continue so we can get the file number and then just basically, see what they have to say, and then we can close and approve or not at next meeting?
Yep, and then that will give me time to talk with Randy and then draft the conditions as well.
Okay, perfect. In that case, Randy, are you okay if we continue until our next public hearing and we can hopefully tie it up then?
Yeah, sure. That'd be fine. Thank you.
That is excellent. Rebecca, our next meeting is, oh God, we're
April 4th.
Jeez. Our first available time?
I would like to say 7:30.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for a notice of intent from the Department of Public Works until our next public meeting, Tuesday, April 4th at 7:30 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Lori,
Whoop. Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I just, I want
Please.
to, first of all, thank you. And I'll talk with Rebecca about this as well. We received special funding for this project. So we're under a time frame that work has to be done basically by June 1st so that we can get all our reimbursements in by the end of June. So I prepared the bid specs and everything, but I'm going to hold them back a little bit. But possibly around that just next hearing date, it may be advertised. And if there's an order of conditions, I'll put it out through an addendum process, just to keep our project
On
moving
track,
forward.
yeah.
And if it gets delayed again, I can always delay the bid opening date. But I just want, because we have statutory requirements for bidding, et cetera, so many times it has to be advertised, and I just want to let the process move along concurrently, if that's okay.
That makes perfect sense to me, yeah, and it's appreciated.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
And have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Take care, Randy. All right. All right. Excuse me. Rebecca, you're good to continue. All right. In that case, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the notice of intent for 711/713 Main Street. Excuse me. When last we met, we had planned a site visit to go and see the proposed items of this project. Sadly, I was not able to make that site visit today, but I know we had other conservation members who were there. Does anybody want to give us a quick update of kind of what they saw in the field or questions? I shouldn't say it. Rebecca, would you like to give us a quick kind of update summary as to where we stand? And then if one of the other commission members wants to give us a quick update of what they saw in the field, that would be excellent.
Sure. So where we stand in the process is we have opened the public hearing. We have received some supplemental information since the opening of the public hearing, which was prior to the last meeting, and that's the middle date, so it was considered last time. And then we also have, as you said, scheduled and conducted the site visit, but we are still waiting on DEP's file number.
Okay. So either Paul or Jim, do you want to say what you saw in the field today, or just thoughts you had on some of the various items within the filing?
Well, I can start. This is Paul. So yeah, so Jim and I and Rebecca, we went out there today and walked through the whole property. Basically, we started looking at where the barn used to be or what the new proposed barn will look like. And the biggest thing there is the footprint will be a little bit larger than the old barn, but pretty much situated at the same place. They are proposing to take out several trees back there to make this work. And we looked at the stream that goes, kind of under the barn and continues the brook there, and how that will be partially opened up, and where that space would be and how that would actually look. And we didn't really talk about how it would happen, but they kind of identify where the daylighting of the brook would happen. Also next to the existing house, what is that, 116, that they have some steps in the back that's going to come down. There's a big slab there that's going over the brook that's going to be removed. There's a wall at the end of the parking lot there, or the courtyard, that has to be reinforced a little bit. And then the actual big area where the barn is, there's the remnants of the foundation that needs to come out. So that we talked about the removal on that and how that was going to do. So there will be some equipment that needs to go down in that area to get it out. But it sounds like they're going to try to use as light equipment as possible. There's also the fencing around the property back there that will be, or proposed to be, removed. So I think that's sort of the highlights in the back where the barn used to be. And then we walked around the building where they are, and they showed us how they're adding a wraparound porch and how that will fit in to the area. From what I was told, there used to be a porch there in the past, so it's not like they're making big changes compared to historical views. And the actual courtyard is going to be, removing the asphalt and getting kind of gravel, so that's good for drainage later. And then we walked over towards the common, where they're proposing to build sort of a boardwalk, which is off the house, but with some sort of connection point. That was a little unclear to me how that would be connected, but it's mostly off the building, but it's on town land actually. And then we discussed the parking areas that's been proposed over there, and how that would go in. And also what kind of surface that is. There's a couple of trees there that we identified that would most likely need to be removed if they, in order to build the parking spaces the way they want to. And then we've kind of ended up in the back corner where they're proposing to build a bridge back over to the barn. And no real disturbance over there other than, trying to fit that bridge into the space. So those were the highlights that I can, that I remember. I don't know if Jim has anything else he wants to add.
No, I think you got it, Paul. That's going down the list as well. I think one of the other things when we talk about the 2 tree removals on the common side, those are owned by the town, so there's need to work with the town to determine how they take those down and what has to happen with that. But other than that, you got it, Paul.
Rebecca, did you have additional thoughts, comments from being on the site visit today?
I did have a few, and a few of them I asked on site. So some of them were related to, well, I guess one point of clarification, I'll get through my comments and then let the applicant respond if you'd like, Mr. Chair. And that being, so Paul mentioned about that there was already an existing porch there at one point. So I just like clarification on that, because although there was some historical, cultural, social, and maybe aesthetic importance brought up, it didn't really seem directly tied to the jurisdictional responsibility of the Conservation Commission. So I just want to understand whether that structure was actually there or not and understand that comment better. So holding that, and I'll run through the other questions that I had. The first was related to daylighting the stream. So as Paul pointed out, they did review that, so that was helpful. I was a little surprised, but understand, because sometimes you want to stay off property line, that it is not being daylighted through to the existing exposed stream. It is being daylighted to about 20 feet to the east. And then there will be what's there existing and then continue on where it's exposed on the adjacent property. Then on the opposite side to the west, as Paul also said, they're removing the concrete slab and the stairwell over the perennial stream. And that, to me, the question I had on site was, why is that not also considered daylighting? The answer I received was the daylight is still allowed to get to it. And I have mixed feelings about that, but maybe that's something we defer to DEP. Regardless, though, I think that needs to be incorporated as part of the daylighting requirement or understanding if they are uncovering that. And they did not note, or they noted that they're not adjusting or altering the stream bed itself. So that's also why they didn't incorporate that under that category, which I get that statement. But again, additionally, with the daylighting of the stream, typically we see a ecological restoration form associated with the notice of intent and supplemental information related to that. As part of the filing, we received an alternative analysis, but not a true alternative analysis is what I would say. It was formatted a little differently. So I think that would be helpful for the commission to see that in its full and an actual alternative analysis. And I can certainly work with the applicant if they have questions on that. The work itself, the areas of concern on site were, so Jim noted that the tree removal put on the town common or on town land. That's something that they have to speak with the select board about, and they're aware of that. We highlighted that on site to just be cognizant of any other additional permissions that they may need. The other was related to tying in stormwater from what their proposed work will be into the town common and their property as well. And just making sure that they're meeting those requirements. The other concern that's overarching, I would say, over all the aspects of their project is the increase in square footage to impervious area or alterations on site within the riverfront area. I think there's a lot of great work that's going on to remediate some of the stormwater and some of the infrastructure that's there that's really not add a state over the stream that is helpful. And I think they've done some of that. They've removed part of the barn. As Paul said, they're looking to reconstruct a barn, which in the same footprint, I don't see an issue with that. I don't see an issue with increasing the footprint slightly, potentially either, as long as they're not increasing the footprint in alteration on site overall per the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. But in addition to that, it was noted on site about some old toilets that were there and the concrete area. So the question I had brought up on site was, is there any plans to remove that, or is it just removing the stone and the concrete? On site, there was a statement made and confirmed that just the stone and concrete will be removed off site. No soil remediation at this time was proposed. I think maybe at the very least doing a soil test or something similar, just to show that if they're altering that site in any way, particularly with any footings or any foundations, even though the barn seems to be higher up and the footings seem to be further away from that area. I think that would be helpful to understand the implications to the site and impacts to the site. Then the stepping stones over the daylighted, not stepping stones. I'm sorry, I'm stating that incorrectly. There are stones over the daylighted stream that exists today, basically under the topsoil. And so we saw some of that. And just making sure that if it is being daylighted, that it is truly going to daylight and going to be restoring the characteristics there versus keeping something enclosed as part of that daylighting category. And I guess for now, unless I can remember one of my other comments, I think Jim and Paul covered the other aspects on site that we had reviewed and gone over as well.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah. I don't know if the applicant or one of the representatives from the applicant want to discuss any of the things that Rebecca was talking about the possibility of an alternative analysis, doing it in a different way, possibility of soil sampling, some of the questions that she brought up tonight. And beforehand, I would say that if we haven't heard back from DEP yet, usually we'll continue it because we generally won't close or make we generally won't close the hearing until we get DEP's comments, especially when we're dealing with Riverfront. But if there's anything you would like to address tonight or any questions you may have tonight, or a willingness to work with some of those different possible analyses.
Mr. Chair, thanks so much for having us back. I think we're all sorry that you weren't able to join us on site this afternoon, but Mr. Garrity and Brandvold represented you all well. And I am Tim Hess from Studio In Situ Architects. For the applicant, Craig, the owner, and our client is here as well. We are joined by Nick King from my office and Dave Crossman, the wetland scientist. So some of these other folks will be participating in our conversation tonight. I'll defer to you, Mr. Chair, however you'd like to proceed. What we had imagined was that we might sort of work our way through sequentially. We did prepare an itemized list of the components of the project. That makes sense to us. If there's any other set of procedures or sequence that feels more proper or helpful to you, I'm certainly happy to try to go in that way.
No, that says, and again, I appreciate that you kind of have the list set. So if you kind of want to take it item by item, that would be great.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just start. Item 1 is the restoration of the foundation wall at the former barn adjacent to the brook. Nick, perhaps you want to share that screen.
Rebecca, if you could allow him to.
Yep. Yep. Right. So Nick, you're muted. Why don't you unmute so you can join us? Nick was just pointing out that the sequence we're referring to, it's not necessarily a chronological sequence. It's the just the itemized sequence here on item 1.3. But Nick, I think if you go to the site plan where we've got just the most kind of, I don't know, draftsmanly diagrammatic. There you go, that one there. And scale it down. So just north of the center of the image, you'll see the number 1 in a round circle. That 1 bisects the south facade of the former barn footprint. And so you'll see there's a dark gray rectangle there. In that position, that sort of forward, not quite horizontal line is the position of that stone wall in question. The proposed barn location is skewed a couple of degrees counterclockwise from the existing or the recent barn location, and steps forward toward Main Street a small distance, and to the east a somewhat larger distance. But that the wall at this number 1 is, we don't think it's especially threatened, but with the work moving around it and the sensitivity of its being the boundary of the brook, it seems important and valuable to do some consolidation and repair work. It will be visible from the northeast quadrant of our site and visible from, if one were to move down to be close to the brook, one could look to the southwest and see it. So that's the first item. The things that I imagine are going to be most important in doing that work is simply the protection of the stream and kind of immediately adjacent space during the work. The stream bed has been covered for some months now with the plywood that was placed there initially during the demolition of the barn, and actually initially for the asbestos remediation prior to demolition of the barn. So it would be our intent to sort of confirm that confirm with a brief on-site inspection that existing protection remains in decent shape, make any corrections that may be necessary to that, and then for this particular line item, probably no meaningful equipment or machinery of any meaningful scale would have to be involved in that repair. That would be largely manual. So I think, if we want to kind of hit these things one at a time, Mr. Chair, perhaps makes sense to share reactions or questions,
Sure,
whatever you'd like to.
Yeah, and I can see on this one, I can see why it would be necessary to do. I appreciate that you're saying that it's not going to require heavy machinery. And I would imagine Is it going to be phased? Is it something that you need to do first, or is this going to be done as part of the larger project?
We did make an attempt to address the kind of sequential question. I don't have that top of mind, but I can say that just logically, I'm pretty confident that this would need to happen toward the beginning of the kind of larger series of items.
I didn't really have too many questions regarding this particular point, but I'll open it up to other commission members to see if there are any questions or comments regarding basically point 1.
If I may just interject briefly, it may be helpful to add, it's our intent that this wall would no longer remain in a structural role, not in the sense of, would still retain some earth and have some work to do, but it would no longer be bearing the load of the barn above.
Gotcha.
So it'd be straddled by the barn's new foundation.
All right. Yeah. Comments or questions from commission members regarding the restoration of the foundation wall? And Rebecca, did you have thoughts or comments on this particular one?
I did not.
Okay. So then in that case, moving on to 2, removal of hazardous trees and invasives.
Thank you, Nick. There's, I think, a better document that illustrates that. Okay, thank you. So on this document or this, I should clarify, this page from within the kind of larger NOI doc, everything yellow here is what we're calling a tree that is poses some manner of hazard to the site overall, and in particular the barn. I suppose that's not true for the 3 trees to the left of the page here. Those would be trees I think came up earlier in conversation. Those are trees on town land. The 2 furthest to the west are I'm not an arborist, so I can't speak with specificity, but they seem to me relatively immature. Maybe they're 6 or 8-year-old trees. The somewhat larger tree just inboard of those is a bit more mature. Those trees that are arrayed around the barn kind of from 10 o'clock through 3 o'clock, some of these are pretty big trees, and although we've made a kind of crude representation of their canopies, the canopies are quite a bit larger than the representation here, and they reach over where the barn construction is proposed. One of those, and David, maybe you can remind me, which I think it's up around 11 o'clock, looks like it is either dead or dying and at some real risk of falling sometime soon. I can't speak to the apparent health of the others, but simply that their location is such that it really reaches out and over the property and over the barn. The tree located there at what I'll call the 3 o'clock location, just immediately east of that spot where we're proposing to kind of terminate our daylighting procedure. That tree is one that Craig and the owner and we were all very enthusiastic about initially, and after a little bit of help from some others who know better, we've been made to understand that it's not especially healthy. It's got a pretty significant lightning scar, and so for sort of different reasons, we are proposing to eliminate that. Now, the other thing that will be important to note here again is the question of which of these trees are on Craig's property and which of these trees are outboard. So if we look, pardon me, where Nick's got the cursor, now that he's tracing the boundary. So you can see the kind of plus signs represent the trunks. So obviously 3 of these biggies are outboard of Craig's parcel and back on town property there. Oh, I'll mention also the Japanese knotweed. It's very extensive in that area and continues some distance. I would say it continues all the way to the new town parking lot to the north, onto the neighboring parcel to the east, and not super deep into the woods. This is kind of seasonally, we're in kind of a nice little sweet spot between the snow and the weeds for a sidewalk, and we're able to get a pretty clear line of sight. And when one stands up at where our courtyard is, at that retaining wall area, you can look out, and it's a pretty continuous sea of the knotweed. But it doesn't continue super deeply for what that's worth. As you look back, there's a couple of old kind of farm walls in the distance, and those guys seem clear. At any rate, we're proposing to kind of initiate a removal process on our parcel for the knotweed.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I never have any arguments with weed removal. Go crazy. The trees, I can understand why you're proposing a number of them. I'm curious about the tree on the far right, the one that actually shades the stream. Is there a reason why that I can see that some are currently overhanging the barn and some that aren't necessarily on the property, but that one currently is shading the stream. Which it's kind of a high value for us relatively. Is there a reason why that one would need to come out? It seems like that one could still live there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nick is going to grab an image that we've got of the lightning damage there. Craig, if you're live with us, you may want to share your anecdotes about that tree as well.
Yes, Tim. I really like that tree. I think it's a sugar maple, but if you look at it from the back side, which I would think the east side, you can see that, that's a good 10-inch wide scar that goes 20 feet up the tree. And there's rot ensuing in there. I had hoped to retain it. I really love the tree, but I think that, it's a safety issue that's just going to come into play. So that was the reason why we proposed that.
Sure, you guys able to see the scar?
It can sometimes be difficult with trees. I know sometimes if they're sick, especially the rot can cause things, but sometimes we see scarring or there's disease. And then I'll talk to an arborist and they're like, yeah, that tree's only got another 25 to 30 years. And it's like, that there's a difference between something that's in danger of falling down the next 5 to 10 years or something that's, going to live with the scar and be healthy for the next 30 to 40 years. And I'd be curious just to kind of find that out. But that was really the only question I had with item number 2. I could see the rest. I'd open it up to commission members if they have comments or questions. And Rebecca, did you have any questions on this particular item or number?
Nope. Just a comment, which I made on site. So thank you for bringing it up, Brian, because I forgot about it. Was noting, did an arborist review these trees that you're establishing are hazardous? And if not, that would really be helpful because these trees are within jurisdictional area again, and within resource area. So just making sure that we're 100% on why they need to be removed, And it's not just for an aesthetic function, and I'm not saying it is. That's not what's been stated this evening, but I'm just saying making sure that we have that information so that we can tie it into any decision that the commission can make and make sure it's the best informed decision.
That's it. Do we want to move on to item number 3, the removal of the stair pad?
Happy to do that, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you. And Nick will call up a couple images for this one as well. So in the plan, item number 3 shows a kind of pink rectangle where there is a poured concrete pad which was built for the purpose of supporting the stair we see there. So in the center image, you get a sense of where it's located over the stream bed, and then the right side image as well. On the leftmost image, you can see that the wooden members positioned to support the concrete, which is kind of an awkward arranged sort of hierarchy of materials there. That wood is rotting and continues to rot, and then the reinforcing steel onto which the concrete was poured is oriented in that direction, which offers no support for the relevant span. And the stair is not in great shape, and our plans for the building do not require that stair. So it's our proposal to remove that stair and then remove the pad, which was placed there to carry it. This may also be a reasonably helpful place to convey the sense that our understanding of the kind of position and condition of the stream under this pad seem to be kind of quantitatively or really qualitatively different from the condition that we're referring to, the kind of proposal to daylight it. Here there is quite a bit more vertical distance above the surface of the water, and a wider channel, and the stream bed is existing, and we'd not propose to make any change to that anyway. So you can kind of get a sense, I think, that the photographs convey why, at least superficially, it seemed to be kind of a little bit of a different animal than the daylighting elsewhere.
I can say I think the daylighting is a larger question, which I think we can get into a little bit more. But as far as removing this pad and removing these stairs, I did not have an issue with that general item list. But I will open it up to commission members if they have comments or questions regarding, I guess this is item 3. Right. And Rebecca, did you have comments or questions regarding item 3?
I didn't, other than the overarching to submit the other supplemental information for the daylighting of the stream on both areas.
Okay. All right, so that's it. Can we move on to item number 4, the removal of a chain link fence?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this may be easiest to describe with this plan here. I think our fence is indicated by a kind of line with X's at kind of key intervals and corners. There is a bit, you'll see our kind of notation block unfortunately obscures a bit of our northeast corner. But there's a chain link fence there. I'm not sure what it might have done for a previous owner, but it doesn't have a constructive and positive role for Craig and his intended use of the parcel in the future. So it's part of our plan to remove it.
And that was another one. I didn't really have any major questions or issues surrounding that one. open up to commission members. Comments or questions regarding the removal of that chain link fence? And Rebecca, did you have any comments or questions regarding the removal of the fence?
I did not mention this comment because it just came in my head because of
Okay.
another property that we dealt with recently with chain link removal. Just making sure that as part of the scope, any concrete footings are also dug up and removed and not just cut and buried. But that is all.
Good point. I was thinking it as soon as you started saying that. It's oh, wait a minute. Yeah, the footings. It looks like we're about a quarter of the way through. We have 14 points. So I'm just going to pause briefly here to say, are there any members of the public here tonight that want to comment on this project and specifically any of those first 4 items we went through on this project? All right. And I'm not seeing any right now. So then if we can move on to item 5, the construction/restoration of the barn.
Thank you. So we'll start with this page and then flip to the next one. We pointed out a few moments ago the slight differential in the footprint, size, and rotation. Then I'll mention, Nick, as you go to the next page, the foundation, when we initially conceived of this barn and started to try to address Craig's needs and the needs of the businesses and tenants that we anticipate in this space, we made a handful of schemes where we were doing our best to sort of enclose, kind of make some use of basement space. And there had been in the existing condition, there was a relatively robust enclosure of the undercroft. We, in sort of wrestling through that and thinking about the kind of footprint into the resource area, it felt clear to us that it would be advantageous for the environment and the site's ability to absorb rainwater, stormwater, a number of other things, a kind of continuity of space underneath. For that reason, we've changed the foundation plan to step a little more lightly. So you see a series of 16 footings, 12 of which are north of the brook, 4 of which are south of the brook. And then again, that retaining wall, which when it's completed, it will probably appear to do some structural work, but it won't. So that's the barn. I guess I'll mention, you will all probably remember from our dialogue prior to its demolition, that was a barn we had some enthusiasm for, but we came to understand that it was sort of beyond repair and beyond really even any meaningful salvaging of its pieces and parts. Working with a local barn expert last year, Craig made a number of field trips and inquiries and was able to find and secure a similar barn quite close to the kind of footprint and kind of larger geometry of the former barn here. And Craig has bought that barn and had it dismantled, restored. They do a pretty sort of thorough process of addressing each joint one at a time. So that is sort of numbered and set aside and in storage, and that it's the barn that we anticipate putting up here. For what it's worth, a pretty beautiful barn, actually a little bit older than the one that was built on site. What else is especially relevant about that? The the existing barn had no rainwater, stormwater control other than to have a big pitched roof. So we had a continental divide down the middle and shed some things east and some west. So we propose a similar roof, but we actually we get into the stormwater management and gutters and downspouts elsewhere. So I guess I'll leave those off, but the new barn would be treated with those. So I guess I'll leave it there.
All right. For the pilings, is it a permanent piling? It would look like a sonotube with, I'm assuming, or is it one of, like we were just talking about, the helical piling, something that can be removed, something less permanent?
Yeah, so given the grade issues, we've got a distance, and I'm just going to guess it's sort of 60 to 70 inches from the underside of the first floor deck to finished grade below. So it's our hope and intent that those footings that would be visible, or those piers that would be visible around the perimeter, would be either sort of single granite piers or stone masonry, a kind of to simulate, to create a more authentic appearance and a kind of historic sensitivity. Now, I'm sure you can understand that kind of work is expensive, and we would also be looking to limit that to those areas where it really has a visual impact and a presence, and probably the four in the center, right, that are shielded by some distance around the perimeter would be the first that we'd look at to maybe save that money and do something simpler. Perhaps a simple CMU pier there, or something analogous to that. We have used helical piles in the past, and we have been discussing whether there may be some advantages that would be fitting for this project. My personal instinct is that, well, my professional opinion, I guess, not just my personal instinct, my professional opinion is probably not a very good fit under the barn. There may be some spots in some of the work further to the west that would be a little bit more appropriate for that. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Mr. Chair.
It does. And to say, as far as tilting the barn and the footprint of the barn, I think I'm comfortable with it in the new barn that's coming in. And again, we can talk more about, again, the daylighting of the stream and some of the gutter systems down the line. But as far as the barn itself, I think you've answered what questions I have currently, but I'll open up to commission members. Any comments or questions regarding, I guess this was 0.5, the construction / restoration of the barn?
Yeah, quick question. I think there's a water wheel, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, is that aesthetic, or are you trying to draw power off of it, or what's the purpose?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer it. It is listed here as item 14 on
I'm
our
sorry.
sheet. So if you want me to answer that now, I can. But we split it out, thinking
I was going to say it's in the barn.
Separately.
Go ahead. I mean, there's no reason why we can't cross that one off now. While we're looking at the barn area.
Okay. The water wheel is, in a sense, an exercise in nostalgia. We understand that this stream was, likely shaped and channeled to some significant extent for the purpose of powering some mills that were here. We have done some reading and some research and talked to some local folks, and we're not able to assert that we know there was a mill on this site, but we believe that sites like ours were host to some mills. In our work with Mr. Crossman, Dave, you could you could share your thoughts here, but he felt like the stream seemed to be shaped in such a way to drive a mill. We see the kind of broader project here as we've talked about. We've used a phrase like cultural commerce. It is we see it as a social place, a kind of gathering place for folks from town, folks that may want to do business in some of the spaces within our project, and people that may want to come to the common for an event or other purpose and simply stroll around a little bit before or after that kind of experience. It's not our intent that we're going to generate power from the water wheel or anything directly like that. We have certainly discussed that it would be interesting to make some direct use of it. We know there's a kind of a wonderful history of orchards and fruit growth here in Bolton. We have imagined perhaps connecting some sort of a cider press or related equipment to the mill. We have discussed the possibility of connecting the mill with, the water wheel with the stormwater collection. That may make some sense. So I think that's the kind of broad strokes of our thinking and attitude about that mill wheel.
I was going to say, and we'll get into it more with the daylighting of the screen, but the one question
Sure.
I had with the water wheel was, how is it powered? Is it going of its own power, actually powered by the water, or is it going to have an engine driving it for looks or for whatever reason? And then it would be, is this an electrical engine? Is this a gas powered engine? What kind of maintenance are we talking about? Oiling this thing on a regular basis, or is
Yeah. So I think what we're showing in our notice of intent is that we propose to have an above ground cistern water storage above the wheel, and in a kind of measured and sort of calibrated and deliberate way, release that water over the wheel to drive the wheel.
Right.
And the material of the wheel, the wood material, what kind of wood material? Did you spec that yet, or?
Yeah, I don't think we specified a species. We have not gotten into any sort of detailed design of the wheel.
Okay.
I think I was going to say, I'll see if there's any more questions on either the barn or the wheel, but I guess that is what they had just like to see is what drives it, what the expected maintenance is. I'm sure you'd have to grease and oil every once in a while, but if it's being driven a certain way, if there's any type of maintenance where you're going to have to get in there, if there's anything we have to worry about leaking into the stream and stuff like that. But any other questions from commission members regarding the barn itself or the water wheel? And then Rebecca, do you have any comments regarding, well, first we'll go with the construction of the barn.
I would just say the commission needs specs on all of these different aspects of the project. They need specs on the water wheel. They need specs specifically if it's open to the stream or to any resource area, or putting water into a resource area, even if it's stormwater capture, and for the reasons Brian stated. But then also the footings, they need specs on what those are, how many of each. Again, this entire site, I think I echo that over the course of the entire site, because it's all within jurisdictional area. It's all within riverfront area. We need those specifications so the commission can make an appropriate informed decision.
Right. So that's stated. Could we move to item number 6 regarding the construction of the porch?
Thank you. Yep. So Nick, if you go back, there we go. So Nick is tracing the shape of the wraparound porch. You'll see it's of a relatively narrow dimension to the east and a deeper dimension to the south. The addition to the east is on the order of 5 feet, and to the south, it's approximately 11 feet. This addition is, it was stated earlier that I believe it was one of the, maybe Mr. Garrity or one of the other members mentioned that there had been a porch there in the past, and I had so long ago that we started this, I'd forgotten that. We do have, we found some historic photographs of the site with a very clear representation of a kind of very elaborate kind of Victorian era rail, some small distance above grade, call it 2 or 3 risers above grade. In that position, immediately to the south of the building at 713. So there was a porch there that this is, I won't argue that this is an attempt to replicate that porch, but we believe it is architecturally and historically a very fitting addition to the building, especially given the kind of new relationship to the hierarchical importance of the town common, which certainly didn't exist, 18, 19 centuries ago when this building was built, or sorry, decades, 18, 19 decades ago when the building was built. And the courtyard would have, in those days, had a much more sort of a heavy lifting set of obligations, and now it's envisioned as a kind of a pedestrian environment. So that's the spiel on the porch. That too, of course, would receive a kind of full perimeter gutter and stormwater management associated with it. This, I'll add, I'm reminded of your question on site today, Rebecca. The surface of the porch would be a permeable. The material itself is not going to be permeable, but it's going to be gapped in such a way that any rainwater that reaches it would be able to pass through it. Now, we propose to roof it, so the rainwater that reaches it is not going to be a high volume. So you can see, if you read the diagonals within that numbered area, those represent the hips of the returning plane. Yeah, Nick's going to pull up a model view of the kind of existing and proposed. There we go. Thanks, Nick. The hip is a little tough to read in this particular perspective. It's a relatively shallow pitch hip, but there, I think you get a sense of what our intention is.
Okay. I didn't have too many comments, and again, you bring up that it's going to be guttered. That was kind of the question, was the stormwater management, because I know it's going to be a covered porch system. The idea of the porch there, I didn't have too many questions other than that runoff. Can I open that up to commission members? Any questions on, I guess this was point 6? Not seeing any right now. Rebecca, did you have comments on point 6?
No, I have no new comments. And just to clarify, I do appreciate addressing that question. What I misunderstood what Paul was referring to. I was presuming he meant that there was an existing porch some time ago on the western side of the structure, not to the south. But I do appreciate that clarification. Thank you. And I apologize for misunderstanding Paul's statement.
Tim, I want to keep going through, but I just want to say time-wise, we're kind of running up against it. We are way late for some of our other existing hearings this week. I know we haven't heard back from DEP yet, so we're probably going to request a continuance. I think we will probably have a number of questions regarding the daylighting of Great Brook. And the basically the rainwater management to an extent. I was wondering if we could kind of quickly move through some of the other items on the list to see if there are any questions regarding those. And I'll ask other commission members to try to get, if we questions or comments we have regarding the daylighting of the stream to you in advance of the next meeting, things that we might want to bring up or know more about. So just, we can all be a little bit more prepared for that discussion. And again, I'm just running short on time tonight. We're about an hour over already. And it's been a long day. So that said, could you possibly move on to item 7, the gravel courtyard?
Yeah, and I'll
That's
be
quick.
quick. I think that one requires almost no explanation. Right now, the whole thing is paved wall to wall to wall. So it's our proposal to remove every inch of that impervious asphalt and replace it with pea gravel and a couple layers of substrate, which would help absorption and infiltration.
And this is another one where I didn't really have many questions on it. It's just a question of the process of how it's done, making sure that it's done properly, which we can kind of see in the specs on that. But other commission members have comments or questions on this item 7? And Rebecca, did you have any comments or questions on item 7 specifically?
No.
Okay. Rainwater management, that's one I'd like to hold off on and talk about next time, because again, that's going to be full site. Same things with planting and rehab, because again, that'll be a full site. Daylighted Great Brook, again, that's a good one to talk about next meeting. But issue point 11, the construction of the boardwalk, it's 7:13. Do you want to go through that one real quick?
Sure. So if you can all see Nick's cursor, this is appearing on the page as a direct vertical line. The proposed construction there is a width of 8 feet, continues from, it really mirrors the length of the building at 713, begins at the south end of that facade, continues to, I guess it's one more bay, I misspoke, one more bay than the existing building. And we propose to roof that, and I think we can probably find a 3D image to represent that. That construction is on piers up above grade, so the grade passes through it and beneath it, and some distance. It's a little difficult to appreciate in the lower right rendering, but the overhead construction does not reach back and touch the building at 713, but a central portion of the decking is proposed to reach back at a width far smaller than the kind of overall dimension of the porch from north to south. It was observed on site today that there are some utilities in that location. There we go. Thank you, Nick. And it is not part of this NOI to address those at the moment. And in fact, it may be sensible that if you look at the rendering in the lower right, you can see some kind of enlarged entry pieces there. We don't really anticipate doing that work immediately. That would be just a little bit further down the road, and therefore the extension of the porch horizontal surface over to the building isn't a strict necessity to this part of the work. So a long, thin bit of construction. All of that is on town land, so that the parcel boundary is something on the order of 4 to 5 feet west of the building flank. And so the boundary roughly bisects the space between the boardwalk and the building.
All right. I don't know that I had too many questions regarding the boardwalk. I was curious if you were going to have to remove those utilities, see how that was going to be done, how that would affect it or affect the area itself. But as far as the overall boardwalk, didn't have too many questions, but I'm more curious to hear what other commission members have to say or questions they may have. And if you don't have any overarching ones, Rebecca, I'd like to hear your comments and or thoughts regarding the boardwalk area.
I have no new comments, but just once again, echoing increased alterations on site and the square footage of such, and just making sure that you are considering those implications on site and making sure that you are under the allowable threshold. The commission hasn't permitted anything yet or made a decision yet, but the may allow up to, you need to be in compliance with at the very least.
Thank you. Could we then move on to issue point 12 regarding the pervious parking?
Yeah, thank you. So immediately to the west of the boardwalk that we just mentioned, you'll see 6 parking spaces there. They're bisected by a kind of pedestrian access walk. And we are proposing to use material similar to what we propose for our courtyard. So it would be a pea gravel over a substrate that is constructed for some absorptive capacity. And there would be, right now, there's a vertical granite curb that separates the drive from that yard area. That would be removed or ramped down for a kind of broad continuous curb cut there. There was a question on site this morning about grading, and our civil engineer was with us at that time. He's not able to join us this evening, but his proposal was that we would anticipate a very gentle pitch from east to west, so draining into the drive area and then using the existing drainage pathway, which goes just north of the path, and Nick's going to trace that area. There is a kind of a depression and a constructed bit of riprap and sort of spillway, or it's probably a better term for that. But we drain out onto that. And then that area coincides with the question of the removal of a couple of other trees. So some of those younger trees that seem to have been planted in connection with the town common creation, those would be removed for the creation of the parking spaces.
Yeah. And it's just a quick one with that, and that be because that part's on the town-owned land, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it is, yes. So the town-owned land, Nick is tracing the line that's
Right.
a very short
Basically the
distance
porch
off
and
of
the
our
parking.
building. So everything west of that is owned by the town.
Yeah. So when it comes to this point, I'd be again curious to hear Rebecca and other comments or thoughts. I appreciate that the parking spaces you were proposing were pervious to a good extent possible. I see that they fit in with the aesthetic. Removing those trees, I think they were planted for the purpose of the common, and next time we'll kind of get into the whole planting and rehabilitation, but I think we'd wanted to see those trees replaced at that level of maturity someplace else on the common or on one of the other town-owned lands. But I know the trust, I shouldn't say I know, wouldn't surprise me to find the trust, bought those trees in a somewhat mature state to plant there once they rehab that area, and I'd hate to lose that. But yeah, again, curious to hear what other commission members have to think about regarding the parking spaces, and then Rebecca's thoughts as well. I was gonna say, Rebecca, if you have anything you want to share at this point regarding those.
Again, no new comments. I already echoed about the square footage alterations, and then also just the reminder that there's some research that needs to be done as to if there's a specific purpose as to why those trees were placed where they were and if they even can be removed. But Brian, I agree with you that at the very least, if there is no specification that is required for those trees to stay where they are, aside from the value to the resource area that they provide, the ecological services that they provide, then yes, I think the intent from the commission should be to request a replacement. But again, I already notified the applicant that that's something they need to be looking into because I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
But that's something that they can do some research on, I'm sure.
And I think we can talk about the bridge to the barn, but I'd almost rather talk about the bridge to the barn when we talk about daylighting. We're talking about the kind of full overarching plans at the next hearing. So I think we've gone through, looks like we've hit most of those points for now. Again, I'm really curious to hear what DEP has to say. It's difficult when we deal with riverfront. As we've said in the past, it's a very unique site because you're kind of forced to deal with riverfront. But I'm curious to hear what DEP has to say. But I appreciate going through everything this evening. And I'll try to get any questions, comments, thoughts, things I'd like to see about regarding the daylighting and some more of the information regarding the stream to Rebecca before our next meeting. But all that said, Tim, with your permission, I'd like to continue to our next public hearing so that we can get some of that information. Sorry, you're muted, Tim.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're happy to come back at your earliest convenience.
Okay. So Rebecca, 7:45 on the 4th looks like my next possible time. Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 711/713 Main Street until our next public hearing, Tuesday, April 4th at 7:45 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Lori,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and other commissioners and Rebecca. We'll see you all soon.
All right. Take care, Tim. Have a good night.
Bye now.
All right. So we still have, all right. So the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to continue to consider a notice of intent for South Bolton Road Map 2.C Parcel 16 DEP file number 112-0720. And as hopefully people can see from our agenda, this is going to be continued until they hear back from MIPA. So that said, unless any commission member has any objections, I'm going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for South Bolton Road Map 2.C Parcel 16 DEP file number 112-0720 until our next public meeting, Tuesday, April 4th at 8:00 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Lori,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye myself.
Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. Next up, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the notice of intent for 159 Ballville Road, Escalante International. is Rebecca's the applicant or representative for the applicant here this evening?
Yes, I see Paul McManus and I see a few of the applicants, other team members on the call as well.
Okay. We had a chance to go out for a site visit for this particular hearing the other day. They were kind enough to show us in the field everything that had been proposed in the NOI. Trying to think, sorry, I looked through my notes to see if I had any existing questions afterwards. I guess the one of the questions or comments I would have is by the snack bar, we know there's an existing tank that's in the resource area. It's probably propane or a gas tank that basically fuels an outdoor grill. It sounded like there was I know there's some work being done at the snack bar, but not necessarily major changes and nothing really happening to that grill site. But just wanted it noted that if that grill site was going to be changed, enhanced, or anything done with it in the future, that we'd want that tank removed from the resource area. And just putting that out there, that if you're going to have equipment in the area and you're going to be digging, I know you're trenching for, different piping and different things. But now might be a time to think about moving that if you were planning on doing any changes to that area in the future. Again, we would probably ask that tank get removed. But if you're
Chairman,
not planning to change anything there, again, like it's probably safer in situ. It looks like it's in decent shape. I know you maintain things well. I just always want to make that point because again, that's something we just wouldn't allow nowadays. We've had people. We actually one of the hearings in front of us tonight. The guy moved housing lots to get the gas tanks out of the resource area.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we
Please.
did very much hear you on that regard and have scrambled since the site walk. And actually, Frank McPartland, who's on, had submitted a plan revision, which as a first iteration, not the final, but which kept the grill and removed the tank. Kelly Cardoza, who has a conflict tonight and isn't on, hopefully she'll be able to join us. She's been in further discussions with Escalante, and basically Escalante has agreed to simply remove the grill altogether. So very late today, and you obviously haven't seen it, which I fully understand, but very late today, Frank put together an additional little sketch plan, and Kelly provided a letter which basically says the proposal is to remove the tank, remove the grill altogether, and we specified some renaturalization, some shrub plantings for that area. So so basically it's in terms of construction, it's really quite simple. It's just put some erosion controls around the lower end, because there were already, as you're aware, there already was proposed to redo the cart paths right next to it. Yeah. So what we've done is proposed to ring the erosion controls around that, pull it out. There's a little bit of a concrete pad there, proposed to remove that as well. And then topsoil and seed and shrub, native shrub plantings to go in that area. So it was some scrambling and an 11th hour, but obviously, we heard you, and Escalante and Bruce Recop from Escalante is on tonight. That's who that is. But they heard you and reacted, and as I said, it was a bit of a scramble, but that is now before you, as what we think is a relatively minor change, but obviously something that you cared about.
Well, I appreciate you putting that into and giving that as part of it. It is appreciated. The only other real note I had was, some of the things that I'm sorry, I can't even read my own rights and I'm blanking on my words, but some of the things that are being left in situ, some of the things that are no longer going to be needed, that are going to be left in the ground.
You're talking about the wells, Brian?
Yes, yes, the wells that are being not, but no longer going to be in use.
Decommissioned.
Decommissioned.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm having that kind of day. But yeah, the wells that are being decommissioned, if they're going to be left in situ, is there, and this was kind of a Rebecca question, is there any concerns for us? I know sometimes it's fine to leave things in the ground. Sometimes we'll have concerns depending upon the materials. Just any concerns with things that are going to be decommissioned and left in situ?
So there's for the water supply wells, that's permitted through Mass DEP. So they have specs for that. So that's something that requires its own permit. So to the extent that can give you some comfort, know that is a permit specific activity.
All right.
And
And
then
then-
I know there was also a question about the for the Title V systems and the tanks. And I couldn't remember if we discussed this in the field, but the two septic tanks at the snack bars, which are proposed to be connected to the sewer system, the tanks themselves will still be used. So they'll essentially serve as tanks and as a pump chamber, as it were.
Yeah.
So those will still be used. Ordinarily, if a tank were to be abandoned, a concrete tank, the Title V regs require that it can stay in the ground, but it has to be holes punched in the bottom so that it would drain. But these will still be in service.
There's no need. Okay. And that was to say, I think that was the third little thing I had on my notes. Again, I'll be curious to hear Rebecca's thoughts and thoughts from other commission members. Taking all the rest of the changes on the whole, I mean, it seems to be a net gain of greenery. It's one of the few projects where I think we're actually, gaining rather than losing some naturalized areas, which makes life a lot easier for us, generally speaking. I don't think I had too many more comments or questions. Again, I saw most of it as a net gain. I really love going to the gravel pathways, cart paths, as opposed to the hard top in certain areas. Sorry, I'm just kind of half scanning notes, and I think you've covered everything. But let me open it up to other commission members. Any comments, questions, or thoughts regarding this project and what we saw in the field? And Rebecca, do you have any comments, questions, thoughts, basically regarding what we saw in the field or on this project as it stands right now, as it's proposed?
I don't, other than there were a couple areas that we looked at, and I agree with you, Brian. I think there's a net gain in terms of restoring some areas regarding the extensive mitigation on site, and I think that's always a positive. There were some areas, though, where when we were reviewing them, there wasn't going to be, it was established that play would not be continued in that area. But yet there was still a large swath of turf between the cart path and the proposed mitigation area, at least what was flagged. And I understand there needs to be a shoulder adjacent to the cart path. So this was beyond any sort of, reasonable, manageable shoulder of that cart path. And that was in a couple locations. And I'd be happy, I don't have it this evening, but I would be happy to identify that. But that's just one item. And again, I think overall it's beneficial. And then the other item was, and I can't remember which hole it was, so I apologize, but we had gone up to the turnaround or cul-de-sac like portion of the cart path on one of the holes. And when we were coming back down, as you look to your left, there was a cart path through the tree line there that's already being used, and that is fine. But again, that was an area that where the center line of the cart path was proposed versus maybe shifting that slightly or allowing more remediation area to just naturally shift that cart path location a couple feet, I think would be beneficial too. But in general, there wasn't any large significant portions of the project that were concerning to me. When we were on site, I had asked about a capped drainage area that wasn't shown on the plans, and that was clarified in the field that it was more of a sump pit or a dry well-like structure. Then whether that's to stay or be removed, that's fine. It's directly adjacent to the cart path and actually on a large sloped area, in an area that I'm pretty sure actually it's going to be removed and allow for the pedestrian access that was right before the crossing and daylighting portion of the stream, if you recall that from the site visit. So those are really my only comments, aside from just making sure we have appropriate erosion and sediment controls. And the dewatering I thought was appropriate, and how they're going to be approaching that in terms of just fixing the various head walls throughout the stream. So those are all my comments for now, Brian.
Okay.
Brian, if I may, just
Please.
to chime in on the alignment of that cart path. So we had looked at several alignments for that further up the slope away from the wetland and the riverfront buffers. And what we found was, in grading out the cart path as we go up the slope, the higher up the slope we went, the more disturbance within the buffer zones we would create. So the cart path would have to be flat, come down the hill, flat for the cart path, and then chase back down. That led to significant disturbance and tree removal. Even if I put in extensive retaining walls. So what we chose there instead was to, while it's further down the hill, closer to the wetland, that's more of an open area with better topography for the pathway. So that there's less disturbance in this alignment than if it was up the hill away from the wetland.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
So I appreciate that clarification, Frank. And what I'm talking about, and I observed that as well on site, I think it's very obvious. What I'm referring to is just by a few feet. It's not really carrying it upslope, but just seeing where that center line is, slightly adjusting it. And again, it may not be actually the cart path itself. It may be just the mitigation area and allowing some of that area to naturalize to the extent that is basically prescribed for that area, as you've prescribed it basically to the front of that tree line. That's what I'm referring to, but you're absolutely right. On site, there is a pretty steep slope that causes some barrier to accomplishing something outside of the jurisdictional area.
Other commission members have comments or questions after what we've just heard, or again, from being out on the site visit? I'm not seeing it at this time. Are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Again, not seeing any at this point in time. All right. So, see, no. At this point, we could normally close it and then basically wait to vote on it. But oftentimes, if it's all right with you, Paul, or anybody representing the applicants, for us to continue it to our next meeting, this will give Rebecca a chance basically to write it all up, get all our boilerplate info in. And then next meeting, we can basically, but usually we can just approve it right there. But if we continue to our next meeting, that basically will allow us to put in that additional information that you talked about today with the removal of the tank, get everything kind of in. If there's any questions, we'll still be able to answer them or take in new information. So if it's okay, go ahead, Rebecca, were you gonna?
I was just gonna say, we'll also give you and the commission time to review the plans that Paul just highlighted were submitted this evening, which I haven't even seen.
That's what I was
But
gonna
the
say. If
commission
that's-
hasn't either.
if we have questions or comments on those, yeah. So if it's all right with you, Paul, is it all right if we continue until our next public meeting? And I'm hoping that we'll kind of look through those plans and try to get everything kind of written up and in place for our next public meeting.
That makes sense, Mr. Chairman. I understand your position.
Okay.
Is your next meeting, I didn't catch it on the last one, is that 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah, it would be April 4th at let's say 8:05. Would that be
So
all
we
right?
would make that request for the record.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 159 Ballville Road until our next public meeting, Tuesday, April 4th at 8:05 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Lori. Nope. Maybe not. We haven't lost Lori. One second. Say, can I skip Lori for now and say, Paul, are you in favor of continuing?
Yes. Hi.
Jim, are you in favor of continuing?
Aye.
All right. Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Okay.
Can we assume that can be continued on majority? I don't know if we lost a member.
No, but I texted Lori to see if she could mute, and if she was still with us. Is she unmuting? She's not. Yep. I'm unsure. So if the commission's comfortable and the board's, and the applicant's comfortable, if Lori unmutes herself by the end of this meeting, she will make that vote. But Paul, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I think you have a majority of your commission that's on, so the motion, I think, would carry and be administratively perfect.
Because they're present, you mean?
Well, you have, even if you count Laurie, you have a majority aye votes for the motion of the members present. You have a quorum, you have a quorum present, you have a majority of that quorum in favor of the motion. So I think even if she were on and voted no, the motion would carry.
It would still carry,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so if the applicants are comfortable with that, I'm also understanding that reasoning, but
If Lori jumps back on, we'll
if
ask her.
Lori jumps back on, we'll double check with her, but we will say that, so we will see you on the 4th, and I will ask the commission that if they have any questions or thoughts related to the most recently submitted revised plans, please send them to me individually, and I will forward them on to the applicant for the next meeting.
Sure, and if there's anything else we can help administratively, by all means, give us a shout.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, moving on, Rebecca. Oh, we already had. Do you want to give us a quick update about East End Road or John Powers?
So for those items, they're just placeholders for now. I don't have any updates at this time for any of those 3 items. I will say I did reach out to the contractor at Century Mill Estates to remind them of what the current status is, what their violations are, and then in addition to that, noting what they're required to submit to the commission, so that we can address some things administratively, but then also bring things into compliance in that sense. So if work is going to continue, it's permitted appropriately, and the work that's been completed can be closed out and addressed as necessary. And I did outright ask the question of whether or not the contractor has abandoned the project, because I felt that was a relevant question. It doesn't seem like that is the case, but I gave them the option to answer that directly as well. So that's the update I have there. And then if you want me to run through the others, or if you want to address the minutes first.
Well, I can do the minutes. Commission members that are here, did everybody have a chance to read through the March 7th meeting minutes? And if so, any edits, corrections, or changes? And if not, does anybody need more time to read through the minutes? None. To make a motion that we approve the minutes from our March 7th, 2023 meeting as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for minutes?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Paul?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
I think Lori's back.
Oh,
Yep.
Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
So going back
Well,
to 159, Brian.
Well, I was gonna say, how are you with minutes, Lori?
Okay.
I'm fine.
Beautiful. So that's unanimous. And then and the exciting thing you missed is we took a vote to continue 159 Ballville Road till our next public meeting. How are you on that? Are you a yay for that or an aye for that?
Nope, that's fine also. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Thanks, Lori.
Excellent. You just saved Rebecca from a whole Robert's Rules crisis of.
It would have been okay. There
Edit
just would have
count.
been a lot of review
Yeah.
and conversations to confirm with the town clerk and some others. So thank you.
Which are now not necessary. It's a wonderful.
Yeah.
So now that we've approved the minutes, if you could go through our remaining updates, that would be wonderful.
Sure. There's no change in updates for Bolton Trails Connectivity Improvement Project. Still working on coordination right now, rescheduling, pricing out materials, reviewing the site and scope of each particular site, making sure the approaches to each crossing that's being installed is also being appropriately manipulated as necessary if it needs it. Then we have the upcoming trail walk on March 31st, which is a Friday. This is a typo. It's meant to say 4:30 p.m. It's going to start at Five Shire Dam Conservation Area and will end at Peach Hill Road, and we'll be identifying the summit, but the summit is actually on private land, so we won't actually be encouraging you to cross onto private property. That will actually be led by Andrew, who was on the call earlier today, and co-led by another Trails Committee member and volunteer actually for the Conservation Department, Gordon as well. So I will hopefully be joining them, but they are going to be leading that. And the big night, so just a reminder, I would anticipate, so we'll be putting out signs tomorrow at areas that we see a higher traffic location for migration for the vernal pools or species that utilize the vernal pools. We're expecting rain, or at least that's what we saw in the forecast. That's subject to change, obviously, as always. So we're thinking over the next few days, we'll see some migration. For those out, please do not try to direct traffic between vehicles. You are welcome to safely move critters across the road or observe them. I definitely would like to know what's being observed there and whether it's roadkill or alive. Regarding the amphibians, in addition to that, again, the signs will be going out at higher trafficked area, but higher traffic does not mean you will be seeing 100 at once. You may see 5. And that is a positive experience. So just to keep people's perspectives realistic on that item, but it's just as exciting. And then for the current MVP project, we are looking for the commission's insights on the development bylaws, which I'll be sending around. So we've already talked about the wetland. We presented to the select board last week and the planning board at a joint meeting. So we'll be sending them around to the various town departments, even though it hasn't been presented to you. We just want your general feedback on what some items might be that stand out and that you'd like to be implemented or focused on, or some items that are in it that maybe you feel actually aren't working towards the town's general goals of climate resiliency. So I will be sending that around in a supplemental email later this week. And we also have the volunteer land steward position still open. Welcome individuals who are interested. And then the open space and recreation plan, we have our next meeting the last Thursday of this month. So I believe that's March 30th at 2:30 p.m. And we'll be basically going over the various sections that people have been assigned and just addressing any questions. As I stated previously at the prior meeting, we will be doing some outreach events and hopefully joining and backpacking onto already planned outreach events throughout the town. So there may be opportunities there as well if you're interested in assisting with that. And that is all I have for updates, Brian.
Yeah, they are appreciated. Any commission members have any new business or start of spring poetry they would like to share? Seeing how I was hopeful on that one, but seeing none, I'd like to make a motion that we hereby adjourn the Tuesday, March 21st meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I hear a second for adjourning?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Lori.
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.